I think this particular gospel passage for today is very, very appropriate for this 8th Sunday in Ordinary Time, the Sunday before we begin our Lenten disciplines, Wednesday of this coming week. Just wanted to focus our attention to, this part of the gospel today that I think we need to continuously reflect on and see how we measure in comparison to the words of Jesus in the gospel. And this passage is that part that says, "Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye, but do not perceive the wooden beam in your own? How can you say to your brother, 'Brother, let me remove that splinter in your eye,' when you do not even notice the wooden beam in your own eye? Remove the wooden beam from your eye first, then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye." Now, I don't know how many of you felt these words being directed at you as I was reading it. I definitely always see myself as someone to whom this passage is directed, because for my entire life, I would even say, but especially when I started my formation at the seminary, and even now, as a priest, this is something that I always try. These words are the words that I try to reflect on a regular basis, to see, to make sure that I do not fall into being a judgmental person of another, and not really working or doing enough to improve myself and my own spirituality, especially in terms of judging others. When I was in the seminary, this was of course 30 years ago, and but I really haven't seen or read anything else that says differently from what our seminary professor in psychology told us. He said that we really need to examine ourselves very carefully, and what we are going to find out, he said, as his own experience was, that we will discover that what we do not like about others is what we do not like about ourselves. And he said, this was 30 years ago, and I find that to be true in my life. And he said, as a trained psychologist, he fought that idea, all right, and yet that was something in his field of work, which was psychology, that is common understanding. Okay, but he said, and it took a long time, this professor of ours in the seminary, for him to admit to the fact that that statement was true. Whatever it is that you don't like in another, something that you don't like in yourself. So something for us to really think about, and to be conscious of, and really use as a way of examining our consciences. You know what I mean? If there is something that we don't like about someone else, or if we see something going, or something that someone is doing that kind of like jars us, or just does not sit right with us, let us examine that and see where we are with regard to that behavior that we are not, that's not sitting right with us. Where are we with regard to that particular behavior? Because like I said, the seminary professor of ours said, what it is that you do not like in another, you probably do not like in yourself. And because you do not like it in yourself, you don't look at it, but you see it in others. And so, as we enter the season of Lent, when our church and our religious tradition encourage us greatly to examine ourselves, to really look deep into ourselves and see in what ways we still need to improve, so our relationship with our God would be better even better than the way it was before. And for us Catholics, examining our conscience on a daily basis it is a good habit to form. As a matter of fact, for us priests and religious, and many people now who actually pray the Liturgy of the Hours, what we call the Liturgy of the Hours, it's the prayer, the prayer in the morning and in the evening and at night before you go to bed. And in religious houses, they do this seven times a day. This prayer, it's called the Liturgy of the Hours. At the very last prayer in the Liturgy of the Hours is night prayer, and that prayer starts with the examination of one's conscience. Okay, but it's not kind of like the examination of conscience that we do when we go to confession, because we really have to spend a little bit of time in examining our conscience before we go to confession, right? But on a daily basis before we go to bed, it is really helpful to examine our conscience and see in what ways we have failed God, just very quickly. Very quickly. And it's really interesting because once you get into the habit of doing this, what it is that you did during the day that really needs to be corrected or that you need improvement is just going to pop up in your head. So doing an examination of conscience is a good thing. And of course the Society of Jesus, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, has a wonderful tradition behind this, and the examen, we call it the examen, at the end of the day, actually is very much in line with what Saint Ignatius of Loyola started in his own spiritual life, and really has made as part of the Jesuit spirituality on a daily basis. That is to examine your conscience before you go to bed. And of course, if there are things that come up as you examine your conscience that you feel need forgiveness for, but even if you don't need a heavy duty, let me call it a heavy duty forgiveness for, just do an act of contrition. That's going to enable you to go to sleep a lot more at peace, and give you a better sleep, hopefully. But going back to the gospel of today that says, remove the wooden beam from your eye first, then you will see clearly to remove the splinter in your brother's eye. The exaggeration that is used by Saint Luke in this particular gospel passage, it's really jarring. A wooden beam in your eye. Here you are with a wooden beam in your eye, and you are seeing the speck in the other person's eye. It's that which means how much of a failure it is on your part to see the faults that you have, and just immediately able to see the faults of others. So it might be good for us as we prepare for the beginning of Lent, as we begin for Ash Wednesday, in the light of the gospel passage of the day, to start thinking, what is it? How am I like the person that Saint Luke in this gospel of today? How am I like the person that he is describing? Describing in the words of Jesus himself. Okay, am I one who is prone to outbursts of anger? For example, and many times, we have outbursts of anger, and because it happens so often, we don't even realize that this is something that we really need to get a better handle of, especially when we're driving. You know what I mean? All kinds of words come out of my mouth that, I usually do not use. But interestingly, this continues to happen, all right? Which means that there is still something in there that I need to work on. And I don't know how you are with regard to this, but I put that on the top of my list because that's the one that happens to me the most. Okay, and I need your absolution for that. Okay, because you might have been the one that I said something about as you were driving past me. And then, of course, how the way that we talk about others. Okay, and the way that we take something that we find out about another person and share it with others, because that's called gossip, And some people say, "Oh gosh, this happened to so and so," and you're talking to your best friend. "This happened to so and so. I really need you. This is what happened, really." And then they talk about it, and they said, "And we really need to pray for her." Well, that's that's called gossip, And then we see the slothful behavior, the laziness of other people, but we don't see our own laziness, right? The amount of time that we spend watching television, just sitting in our lazy chair. But we see other person. She should be at the kitchen, doing something, or cleaning up after the meal, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, there's these are just examples, and I'm sure you can come up with other examples. The lying that happens, and maybe this is actually more prevalent than we think it is, and it probably happens more often in our lives than we realize, because we really have to be staunch tellers of the truth. And I really, really believe that the world is going to change when we are able to do that more faithfully and more frequently. Because not telling the truth, okay, is against one of the commandments, right? It is, and these are the 10 Commandments. The most. How do I say this? Important things and important sins that we need to be conscious of. The 10 Commandments I detail to us, and lying. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Right? That's one of the commandments, and yet, how often do we not tell the truth and say, "Well, it's just a white lie." A lie is a lie is a lie. Does that make sense? And a lie, it's I always think of it this way: when we tell a lie, we're making the world turn in a direction that it really isn't turning. And how successful are we going to be with that? Life is going to be a lot easier and a lot more fruitful if we just went in accord with what is true. And of course, the other thing that we probably see a lot in others, especially for those of us who are here in church, that we judge others about, is the way that they practice their faith. Excuse me, some of us. Yeah, I've heard it more often now than before, actually, and it's because of the pandemic, right? Because of the pandemic, we were not able to come to church and worship in person like we used to. Some people have gotten really, really comfortable doing live stream or participating in a mass on Sunday and a holiday of obligation. I live stream because it is still available. And those of us who are here, how many times have we found ourselves saying, where is so and so? Seeing what it is that they're not doing, and not seeing how we ourselves are failing in the practice of our Catholic faith. Now, it's really interesting that this particular gospel we can actually use to we can actually use to help ourselves see how other people around us can actually be mirrors for us. Because, like I said, it's a known fact in psychological circles that what we do not like in others, we do not like in ourselves. And so as we prepare ourselves for Lent, let's thank God for this wonderful gift of His Word to us today that really exhorts us to think a little bit more about how we can, or what it is that's happening in our lives right now that we can improve, in, that we can try to correct, the graces that are going to be available to us during the season of Lent. The season of Lent is a season of tremendous, tremendous grace. Okay? With all the prayers and all the sacrifices that people are doing as part of their Lenten discipline, so that their direction would be their direction will be pointed firmly towards God. And so for this remaining couple of days, just continue to reflect on what the Lord Jesus has given us in the gospel today, and see in what ways we are being called to improve our spiritual lives, especially in terms of how we behave towards others and the way we judge them.